Both TED and Fulbright are about exchange. So let's start the evening off with a little interaction. Who here has heard of the term buzzword? Show of hands, yeah? Okay, good, yeah. You know the words, they sound really, really good. They make you look really, really good, but they mean pretty much nothing. And by that show of hands, I just want to say thank you to all the members of Parliament House. Clearly you're here tonight. Appreciate you coming. So it's okay, I also very much enjoy buzzwords. In particular, I enjoy the word disruption. And during this talk, hopefully you'll understand why. I attended Stanford University, which is pretty much in the heart of Silicon Valley, and explains my knowledge of buzzwords. And when I was at Stanford, I was fortunate enough to participate in a number of research activities that I truly believe will be disruptive. I participated in projects that focused on displaying information via the sense of touch rather than through sight or sound, and another project that focused on exploring new ways to conduct brain surgery by growing our instruments through tissue rather than slicing and inserting it. And most recently, at my Fulbright host institution at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, we've been working on a system to predict and prevent falls in the elderly months, potentially weeks, before the fall would have occurred naturally. I'm really, really proud of the past work that I and my colleagues have been able to accomplish, and I'm extremely optimistic for what future endeavors like these hold. And when I was asked to give this talk, I thought about going in depth in any one of those, but I realized that despite their importance, they're not the most important idea that I have that's worth spreading. And that's because none of them would have happened if I hadn't been disrupted from my trajectory as a curious but not exceptional student in rural Minnesota. And by rural Minnesota, I mean you wake up every once in a while and there's a cow in your backyard, and that's not exactly what I mean by disruption. So let me explain how I define disruption. For me, it means an event that alters some fundamental element of your reality. And to give you a taste of what disruption is like, I'd like to give you an example. Now, the only thing that I know that we have in common is this talk, right? So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and when you open them, hopefully I'll have disrupted some idea or assumption that you've made about me. Okay, you can close your eyes. Okay, you can open them. Hopefully you notice that something is different. And for any other visually impaired people in the audience, I just took out my white cane and put on my sunglasses. So now there's that really awkward silence where, everyone's staring at my cane, but they're trying really hard not to. So we're just gonna give them a second, catch up, process, apply their stereotypes. Yeah, okay, everyone seems to be coming back. That's good. So prior to me taking out my cane, you probably didn't realize it, but while you could see me, I couldn't see any of you. And that sort of disruption is what I want to talk about. Specifically, how do you deal with that kind of disruption? My process for dealing with disruption has 3 parts: take ownership, verify, and respond. And it's 3 parts because when you get knocked down and you feel like your life is in shambles, taking out a 30-step checklist on how to improve your situation in life doesn't work all that well. So the first step, take ownership. Now this is the most difficult step for me, and it's difficult because it means that you're admitting that you are in a difficult situation. And you're also accepting that whatever happens next, however the situation plays out, that's on you. But when you reframe it, it's also empowering, because after this thing happened, you're taking back control. Whatever happens next, that's your call. Taking ownership is the step that takes this thing that's happened to you and pulls it into your mental workspace so you can start to get to work on it. When I first moved to Sydney, I actually didn't need my cane. I had been legally blind for several years, but I had never gotten to that point. After a few months of walking back and forth from work, I started to trip and stumble, and I started to get really frustrated because I realized that my eyesight was getting worse, and there was nothing I could do about it. But then I forced myself to take ownership of the situation that I was really in. I didn't pick for this to happen, but I did get to pick what happened next, how I responded. So what was the situation that I needed to respond to? That's the second step, to verify. And this is the step that I believe that most people skip. And it's because, at least I think, when something happens to you that makes you feel completely powerless, it's so easy to forget, but you still have the power to interpret and verify what that situation really is and what it means to you. After you've taken ownership of a situation and it's in your mental workspace, you start to peel back the layers of biases and labels, your own preconceived notions, and what everyone else is saying around you. And you get to the verifiable truths of the situation. And from these truths, you can construct a new mental model. And often you'll find that this new mental model describes a situation that is totally different, with smaller problems, or even that there isn't a problem at all. When I was having a hard time walking to and from work in Sydney, I forced myself to verify what exactly was wrong. And after thinking about it for a significant amount of time, I realized that what was really getting to me wasn't the stumbling and tripping, which isn't great. It was the physical pain of bruising my feet to and from work every single day. And once I had defined exactly what my problem was, the situation I found myself in, I could decide how I wanted to respond to it. So that's the third step, and that's respond. Now, there's a lot of theories out there and techniques for being creative and design thinking your way out of problems, ideate, iterate, whatever, a lot of buzzwords. The only thing that I feel really strongly about when you are trying to respond to a situation is that you generate multiple potential responses. And I say that because when you generate multiple responses, you're more likely to think of a non-standard solution. You're more likely to find a solution that addresses your problem, but also avoids any adverse effects on the other parts of your life. This isn't a contained problem. Whether those other parts are your friends, family relationships, financial obligations, whatever they may be, they need to be taken into account too. And third, after spending so much time verifying exactly what your situation is, what your problem is, and then selecting a response that you really believe will fix it, it's so much easier to stay committed to that response when the going gets tough in the future. So back in Sydney, when I was having a hard time walking to and from work, and I'd established that it was the physical pain that was really getting to me, I generated a few different responses. The first was, I could take the bus. I thought about it, and I realized I really enjoyed being outside at the beginning and end of my day. And second option, I could use a cane, but at the time, that seemed like a bit overkill. I mean, I wasn't running into anything. I was just tripping every once in a while. Third option, I could hire a grad student to carry me. That was cheaper than the bus, believe it or not. But after thinking about it, I realized, I study biomechanics. I should really be able to figure this out. So I decided to instead to teach myself a more stable gait, a different way to walk that would be relatively immune to the small variations and perturbations that I was experiencing from the pavement in Sydney. And this worked really well for several months. Eventually, though, I started to run into larger and larger objects, and I'm probably sure you can tell, but in my tight millennial pants, I can only get my leg over so many of them. So I had to reevaluate. I had to re-verify what my situation was. And now it was pretty clear. I just needed more information about my surroundings. And a cane was a really simple response for that. Now, eventually needing a cane doesn't indicate that my first solution of using a more stable gait was bad. Rather, it indicates that situations are often dynamic. They evolve. And our responses need to adapt accordingly. I developed this process as a tool in order to deal with the periodic disruptions of a progressive disease. But truth be told, it's had an equal, if not larger, effect in every other aspect of my life. It's what's enabled me to make my research contributions by overcoming periodic disruptions there, or huge events like when a new paper surfaces in my field, a new discovery that totally changes everything and I have to pivot completely. And also in little things, like when I'm just lost and I'm in a new city. The point is, life is full of disruptions in every aspect. And when you know how to deal with those disruptions, that's what makes it an adventure. And that is why disruption is my favorite buzzword. Thank you.